Laura's morning started like any other. A quiet moment with her coffee, the city humming outside her apartment window. The aroma of freshly brewed espresso filled the air as she scrolled mindlessly through her phone. It was just another ordinary day, until the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. With a slight frown, she set her mug down and walked to the door. Through the peephole, she spotted a delivery man holding a small envelope. "Miss Laura Hayes?" he asked, handing it over with a polite nod. Laura took the envelope, her fingers grazing the thick, expensive paper. A subtle fragrance of lavender clung to it, familiar yet distant. Her stomach tightened with unease. She hadn't seen a wedding invitation in years, not since college friends started settling down. She tore it open, eyes scanning the delicate cursive inside. The words blurred together for a moment before her mind caught up. Mr. and Mrs. Carter request the honor of your presence at the wedding of their son, James Carter, to... Laura's breath caught in her throat. James Carter. Her James. No, not hers. Not anymore. A cold weight settled in her chest as she stared at the name of the bride-to-be, someone she had never heard of before. The date was set for 2 weeks from now, the venue a picturesque vineyard just outside the city. Her fingers clenched around the card, the weight of memories crashing down on her. James, the man who had once promised her forever, the man who had whispered 1,000 I love yous against her skin, the man who had left. The hurt was still there, buried deep beneath layers of time and silence. She had convinced herself she had moved on, but this invitation was proof of a reality she hadn't fully faced. James was getting married, and it wasn't to her. She should toss the invitation. She should block the number listed for RSVP and pretend it had never arrived. But she didn't. Instead, she sat down, pressing the card against her lap, a slow, bitter smile curling on her lips. Maybe this was fate handing her an opportunity, a final chapter to close a book she had left unfinished. Or maybe, just maybe, it was time to reveal the truth. Laura placed the invitation on the coffee table, but her mind refused to let it go. Memories she had carefully tucked away began to surface, vivid and raw. No matter how much time had passed, some wounds never fully healed. She met James 5 years ago, on a rainy afternoon that felt like it belonged to a movie. She had been balancing a stack of books while rushing across campus when a sudden downpour caught her off guard. Without warning, the heavens opened, and cold raindrops soaked through her sweater. She sprinted toward the nearest awning, bumping straight into him. "Whoa, easy there," he had said, steadying her with both hands. His touch was warm despite the rain. "You okay?" Laura had laughed nervously, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "Yeah, just losing a fight with gravity." He smiled, a smile that had lingered in her thoughts long after that day. "I'm James, by the way." From that moment, everything changed. Their relationship unfolded quickly, effortlessly. James was the kind of man who made the world feel lighter. He had a way of making her laugh when life felt too heavy. Late-night drives, spontaneous trips to the beach, whispered dreams under a blanket of stars. Each moment with him felt like a promise of forever. And he had promised. "I'll love you forever, Laura," he had whispered one night as they lay tangled together in bed. "No matter what happens, I'll always choose you." She had believed him. With every fiber of her being, she believed him. But forever didn't last. It ended on a cold January night, just after New Year's. Laura still remembered the way her heart pounded when she picked up the phone and heard his voice, distant and unfamiliar. "We need to talk," he had said, the warmth in his tone replaced by something colder. Those 4 words unraveled everything. He couldn't give her a clear reason. He spoke in circles, something about needing space, about feeling lost. But the truth, the one he didn't say aloud, was loud enough in the silence he left behind. He didn't choose her. Not anymore. For months, Laura tried to move on. She buried herself in work, filled her weekends with friends, and told herself that time would erase the ache. But no one ever really prepares you for the ghost of a love that deep. It lingers. In songs, in places, in the way your heart skips when you hear a voice that almost sounds like his. And now, after all those years of silence, here he was again. Not in person. Not with an apology. With a wedding invitation. A sharp wave of anger cut through the sadness. How dare he? Did he think she would smile politely and wish him happiness? Did he assume she had forgotten everything they shared? Laura stood, pacing the living room as her mind raced. She should ignore it. Toss the invitation, block his number, and never look back. That would be the sensible thing to do. But the truth clawed at her chest. The truth he never gave her the chance to say. She had swallowed her pain, left her questions unspoken. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for James to finally hear them. A plan began to form. A reckless, burning thought that refused to be ignored. She would go to that wedding. Not as a guest, not to congratulate him, but to face the man who had broken her heart and make sure he understood exactly what he left behind. Laura picked up the invitation again, her heart pounding in her chest. She traced his name with her fingertip, a bitter smile curving her lips. "If you think I'm letting you go without hearing the truth," she murmured to herself, "you're wrong. This wasn't over. Not yet." For the next few days, Laura couldn't shake the thought of the wedding. No matter how much she tried to distract herself, work emails, dinner with friends, late-night movies, the invitation remained on her coffee table like an open wound. Each time she passed by, her eyes drifted to James's name, pulling her back into the past she thought she had buried. But this wasn't about the past anymore. This was about closure. About making sure James faced the truth he had so easily walked away from. By the third night, the decision was made. She would go to the wedding. But she wouldn't just sit quietly in the back row. If James wanted to pretend their story never mattered, she would remind him. Laura opened her laptop and began searching for the venue. The vineyard was as perfect as she had expected, lush, picturesque, the kind of place where fairy tale weddings happened. The ceremony was scheduled for sunset, followed by an elegant reception under twinkling lights. It was the kind of life they once dreamed about together. A bitter taste settled on her tongue. He's living the dream, with someone else. She leaned back in her chair, fingers tapping against the desk. Barging in and causing a scene wasn't her style. If she wanted to make an impact, she had to be smarter than that. This wasn't just about confronting James. It was about making him realize that not everything could be swept under the rug. But what exactly was she hoping to achieve? Revenge? An apology? A part of her still wanted answers. Why had he left without a real explanation? Did he ever love her the way he promised? She wouldn't find those answers sitting at home. The next morning, Laura slipped on a crisp white blouse and black pencil skirt, her no-nonsense outfit, and drove across town to an upscale boutique. If she was going to walk into that wedding, she wanted to do it with confidence. After scanning the racks of elegant dresses, her fingers landed on a sleek, emerald green gown. It was bold, unforgettable, perfect. As she stood before the mirror, the dress hugged her curves in all the right places. She tilted her head, imagining James seeing her like this, knowing exactly what he had lost. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered inside her. What if this is a mistake? What if it only reopens old wounds? No, she wasn't backing down. At the counter, she swiped her card without hesitation. If James wanted to play pretend, she would make sure her presence shattered his illusion of a perfect ending. The days leading to the wedding passed in a blur. Laura rehearsed what she would say, each word sharpened with years of unspoken pain. She would be calm, direct, no theatrics, no tears, just the truth. And when she was done, she would finally walk away, leaving James to live with the consequences of his choices. The night before the wedding, Laura sat on her bed, the invitation in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. The city lights glowed softly through her window. Part of her knew she was taking a risk, Showing up uninvited could backfire in 100 different ways. But the alternative, staying silent, was no longer an option. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from her best friend, Mia. Mia. Still thinking about it? You don't owe him anything, you know. Laura smiled faintly, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Laura. I know. But I need this. For me. Mia's reply was almost instant. Mia. Then go and remind him who he lost, and if you need backup, I'm a phone call away. Laura laughed softly, warmth spreading through her chest. No matter how reckless this plan felt, she wasn't completely alone. By the time her head hit the pillow, her decision was sealed. Tomorrow, she would face James. She would deliver the truth he had run from, and finally reclaim the power he had taken with him the day he left. No more doubts. No more silence. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning of the wedding arrived with a golden sunrise that stretched across the city skyline. Laura stood by her bedroom window, cradling a mug of coffee between her hands. She had barely slept, her mind spinning through every possible outcome. But beneath the anxiety, there was a quiet resolve. Today wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about James. It was about her, finally saying the words she had swallowed for years. By noon, the emerald green dress hung neatly on her closet door, shimmering softly in the light. Laura ran her fingers over the silky fabric, her heart pounding with anticipation. No more second-guessing. She would go, speak her truth, and finally let the past go. She took her time getting ready. Soft curls framed her face, and a hint of rose-colored lipstick gave her confidence an extra boost. When she slipped into the dress, it fit like a second skin. Elegant, bold, and impossible to ignore. By the time she slid into her car, the afternoon sun hung high in the sky. The vineyard was an hour outside the city, tucked into rolling hills and rows of grapevines. As she drove, her thoughts drifted back to James, to the way he used to pull her close during cold nights, to the promises that once felt unbreakable. And yet, he had broken them. A sharp ache twisted in her chest, but she pushed it aside. Not today. Today I finish this. The entrance to the vineyard was lined with white roses, their fragrance hanging heavy in the warm air. Luxury cars filled the gravel lot, and laughter drifted from the terrace where guests mingled beneath silk canopies. Laura pulled down the visor mirror and gave herself one final glance. Her eyes were steady. Her smile was unshakable. As she stepped out of the car, a breeze lifted the hem of her dress. Heads turned as she walked toward the ceremony space, her heels clicking softly against the stone path. She wasn't on the guest list, she knew that, but no one questioned her. She moved like she belonged. A soft melody floated from the string quartet near the altar. White chairs formed two perfect rows, facing a floral archway where James would soon be waiting. Laura slipped into the back, unnoticed, her heart hammering against her ribs. And then she saw him. James stood at the front, adjusting his cufflinks. Even after all these years, he looked achingly familiar. The strong jawline, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the ends. But there was something different now. A tension in his shoulders, a shadow in his expression. For a fleeting second, their eyes met across the crowd. Laura's breath caught in her throat. Did he recognize her? Did he feel the same pull? The ghost of everything they had once been? He looked away. Pain flared hot in her chest, but she stayed rooted in place. You wanted this. Don't back down now. The music shifted, signaling the bride's arrival. Laura held her breath as a woman in an ivory gown appeared at the edge of the aisle. She was beautiful, graceful, with soft blonde curls cascading down her back. And as she walked toward James, his face softened into a smile Laura remembered all too well. A lump formed in her throat. That smile used to be mine. The ceremony began, but Laura barely heard the words. Her heart pounded in her ears as she played out the moment to come. The truth she had carried for years, finally laid bare. But the closer they came to the vows, the heavier her thoughts became. What am I really doing here? Would confronting James give her peace, or just reopen wounds that had barely begun to heal? When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Laura's fingers curled into her palm. This was it, the moment to stand, to speak, to shatter the perfect illusion. But no words came. Her throat tightened. Her heart ached. But for the first time, clarity pierced through the fog of anger and hurt. James had moved on, and maybe it was time for her to do the same. A breath shuddered from her chest as she eased back into the shadows. No grand confrontation. No dramatic speech. The truth didn't need to be spoken aloud for her to reclaim her power. She had come looking for answers, but maybe the only answer she needed was this. She deserved better. Without a backward glance, Laura turned and walked away. By the time the bride and groom sealed their vows with a kiss, she was already gone. Laura's heels clicked softly against the stone pathway as she made her way back to the parking lot. Each step felt heavier than the last. She had come with a plan, to confront James, to finally speak her truth. But instead, she was leaving without saying a word. As the warm breeze brushed against her skin, a wave of doubt crept in. Did I make a mistake by walking away? Her fingers trembled as she unlocked her car, but just as she reached for the door handle, a voice cut through the air behind her. Laura? She froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. I know that voice. Slowly, she turned around. James stood a few feet away, his tie slightly loosened, a crease forming between his brows. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distant sound of laughter and clinking glasses floated from the reception. But here, everything felt impossibly still. I thought it was you, he said, his voice low and uncertain. Laura swallowed the lump rising in her throat. I wasn't sure you'd recognize me. A faint smile touched his lips. I could never forget you. The words hung between them, heavy with everything left unsaid. James took a hesitant step closer. Up close, she could see the lines of worry etched around his eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at her like she was his entire world. But that was a lifetime ago. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice softer now. Laura hesitated, her pulse racing. This was the moment, the opportunity to say everything she had rehearsed. But standing here, face to face with him, the anger she had carried for so long began to unravel. I needed to see you, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. His expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his eyes. After all this time. You never gave me answers, James, she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. You left, and I had to pick up the pieces alone. I deserved to know why. He let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. I know. I should have explained, but... He shook his head. I was a coward, Laura. And I hated myself for it. Her chest tightened as the memories came rushing back. The nights she spent crying herself to sleep, the endless questions with no answers. She had imagined this moment 100 different ways, but nothing could prepare her for the raw vulnerability in his voice. I loved you, she said quietly. I would have fought for us. His jaw clenched. I loved you too. That's why I left. Laura blinked, confusion flickering across her face. What? James took another step closer, his voice thick with emotion. I was scared, Laura. Scared that I wasn't enough for you. I knew how much you wanted a future, marriage, a family, and I wasn't sure I could give you that. So instead of being honest, I walked away before I could hurt you more. Her heart ached at his words, at the truth she had waited so long to hear. You didn't get to decide that for me, she said softly. You broke my heart when all I wanted was to love you. His shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. I know, and I've regretted it every day since. Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the echoes of what could have been. Laura's mind spun with everything he had said. Part of her wanted to hold on to the anger, to remind him of the pain he had caused. But another part of her, the part that still remembered the way he used to make her laugh, just felt tired. "I didn't come here to ruin your day," she finally said. "I thought I needed answers, but maybe I just needed to let go." James's face softened, and for a fleeting second she saw the man she had fallen in love with, the man who once promised her forever. "I'm sorry, Laura, for everything," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve the way I left things." She nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the past begin to lift. "No, I didn't. But I think I'm ready to move on now." His eyes held hers for a moment longer, as if searching for words he couldn't quite find. But there was nothing left to say. The chapter they had written together was over. It was time to turn the page. Without another word, Laura turned and opened her car door. But before she could slide inside, James spoke one last time. "You look beautiful," he said softly. A bittersweet smile curved her lips as she met his gaze. "Goodbye, James." And with that she drove away, leaving the vineyard and the ghosts of their past behind her. The drive back to the city was quiet. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting soft hues of orange and pink across the sky. Laura kept her hands steady on the wheel, but her heart felt lighter, like she had finally released a weight she had been carrying for too long. For years, she had been haunted by unanswered questions and the ache of unfinished business. But now, after hearing the truth from James, something inside her shifted. She hadn't needed revenge. She hadn't needed a dramatic confrontation. All she had needed was closure. And today, she had found it. By the time she reached her apartment, the city lights were beginning to twinkle against the dusky sky. She slipped off her heels by the door and let out a long breath, feeling the tension slowly drain from her body. It's over. Finally. A soft chime from her phone pulled her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. A message from her best friend, Olivia. "Well, did you do it? Did you ruin the wedding?" Laura let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. She quickly typed a response. "No drama. Just closure. And honestly, that's all I needed." A moment later, Olivia's reply popped up. "Proud of you. You deserve better." Laura smiled softly to herself. For the first time in a long time, she believed those words. She changed out of the emerald green dress and into a pair of cozy sweatpants, feeling a sense of comfort settle over her. Tonight, she wasn't going to drown in memories or second-guess her choices. Tonight, she was moving forward. With a cup of tea in hand, she curled up on her couch and let her mind wander to the future. There was still so much ahead. New dreams to chase, new people to meet. For too long, she had let the past hold her back. But not anymore. A soft knock at her door broke her thoughts. Frowning slightly, she set her mug down and crossed the room. When she opened the door, a familiar face greeted her. "Eric," she said, surprised. Eric lived 2 floors up. A kind, easygoing guy she had met in the elevator months ago. They had shared casual conversations and occasional coffee runs, but nothing more. Still, every time she saw him, he made her smile. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and relaxed. "I know it's late, but I was grabbing takeout and thought you might want some." He lifted a brown paper bag. "Thai food. Your favorite, right?" A soft warmth spread through her chest. "You remembered." He shrugged with a playful smile. "Of course. Hard to forget someone who talks about pad thai like it's a life-changing experience." Laura laughed. A real, genuine laugh that felt like the final piece of her heart falling back into place. "I'd love some," she said, stepping aside to let him in. As they settled onto the couch, unwrapping the warm containers of food, Laura felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. Maybe today wasn't about reopening old wounds or chasing what was lost. Maybe it was about making room for something new. Eric handed her a pair of chopsticks. his eyes lingering on her for just a beat longer than usual. So, anything interesting happened today? Laura thought back to the vineyard, the confrontation she had once dreamed of, the answers she had finally received, and the choice to walk away with her head held high. Nothing I can't handle, she said with a smile. He grinned. I believe that. And as they laughed over shared bites of spicy noodles and traded stories about their day, Laura realized something important. The past no longer had power over her. The future? That was hers to write. And maybe, just maybe, it was already off to a beautiful beginning.